Hi there. I don't know how well this is going to work. I'm standing a little further away from my iPad, trying to find a place without too much wind. Hope the wind doesn't destroy the sound here. I want to talk about languages. The other day I had 6 interviews in Barcelona. I had interviews here in Girona talking about languages, but when I had my interviews in Barcelona, it was the European Day of Languages. And that got me to thinking about languages. So, of course, I'm here in Catalonia. In Catalonia, the language, especially in Girona, the most widely spoken language is Catalan. Catalan is perhaps perceived as a minority language. It's perhaps a minority language in Spain, but in terms of Europe, it's actually quite a widely spoken language. There are more Catalan speakers than speakers of Finnish, or Latvian, or Estonian, or Lithuanian, or, Croatia has only 4 million people, but of course Serbo-Croatian is a much larger language. Well, it turns out in Catalonia, there are 4 official languages. There's Spanish, Catalan, Aranese, which is a language spoken by a very small number of people in a valley close to the French border, very similar to a dialect of a southern French language, which is also not widely spoken. And it makes me realize, unfortunately, there was a tendency in previous centuries to centralize. Like in France, they suppressed other languages. The people in Brittany don't speak Breton. There were a variety of southern French languages that are no longer spoken, many of which were similar to Catalan. Catalan is more similar to some of those southern French languages than it is to Spanish. It's a pity that we don't have those languages. And of course, it's not as if the people who live in France or that the world daily feels this sense of loss that we don't have those languages. However, if we did have those languages, if people wanted to speak them, if they spoke them, that doesn't mean that people in France can't communicate with each other, because you can have a national language and you can have a regional language. I mean, here in Catalonia, it's extraordinary how people switch back and forth between Catalan and Spanish. But Catalan is sort of their identity as Catalan people. And they are, from what I can gather, tremendously bilingual, much like what I saw in Ukraine, where people might even be more comfortable speaking Russian, but they recognize that Ukrainian is sort of a symbol of their national identity. In Canada, there's much talk about, in a way, reviving, or at least making sure we maintain indigenous languages. And I think the conditions are there to do that. They've never been better, because, unfortunately what tends to happen is, if, say, we're going to talk about, maintaining or strengthening the position of, say, Cree in Canada, what happens is people want to find ways to access government funding to write up great long grammars of the Cree language, all of which is quite unnecessary. What's needed is to get people who speak the language to talk to each other and to transcribe that, so that we build up this corpus of language content in, say, Cree, ranging perhaps from simple, mini stories like we have at Link, to people talking about things that matter to them. And so you could go to a website and find this enormous treasure trove of people speaking that language. Then people could learn that language, because, people, obviously speakers of the language, but people, it's sort of like chicken and egg. Like, we don't speak the language because we don't hear it, and then we give up, and then we speak English. And nothing prevents people in Canada from being fluent speakers of English or French and participating fully in all aspects of Canadian life, and yet still be speakers of Cree, let's say. So I think it's not an either or. Similarly, it's kind of, I think, unfortunate that the world has, it's useful to have English as an international language, but it means that every time English speakers go anywhere, their basic assumption is wherever they walk into a store or something, the local people have to speak what is to them a foreign language in order to communicate with you. That's not a realistic expectation. If we had, and I think again conditions are very favorable, if we revived and strengthened minority languages, regional languages, which Spanish certainly is, which Arabic is, which Russian is, which Bahasa Indonesian is. I've left some out, undoubtedly Turkish languages perhaps. Strengthen these regional languages so that when you travel in the world, you have a few other options besides English. So, and I don't think one needs to have a sense of obligation about learning or preserving these languages. It should be done in a way that we do it because we want to do it, because it's fun. It's fun to speak these languages. It's fun to learn languages spoken by relatively few people. Catalan is not that few. It's whatever it is, 5-6 million people. But I come here and I hear it, and it's very melodious, and I like the sound of it. I'd like to learn it, and we are going to have it at Link. And I don't know if you're, in Myanmar, and you get interested in the language. It's related apparently to Tibetan, and if you get into that language, then you might learn Tibetan. But then you have to have the resources, and that's why I think the major sort of emphasis in trying to once again revive or to preserve or to strengthen these various languages, be they regional or even spoken by very few people, is to work together to develop sort of corpuses, audio with text, where these languages can be accessed, rather than reinventing yet another grammar book, which is not going to help an awful lot of people. So, just my thought on the European Day of Languages. I think it's great that there are so many languages in Europe. It doesn't prevent people from communicating. I think the more language, as I said the other day, the more languages you speak, the better you become at speaking foreign languages, learning foreign languages. And so I'm hoping that the trend will be towards multiplying the number of languages we learn, the number of languages that we use, including languages spoken by very few people, right up to languages spoken by a lot of people. Anyway, and I should say I'm at the PGA Catalunya golf course, because what triggered my trip to Europe this time was the fact that my wife and I are celebrating our 50th wedding anniversary, and she's very keen on golf, and she follows this British golf pro on YouTube called Chris Ryan, and he has a golf academy here, and that's what started it all. And then we built in the trip to Croatia and visited Tarragona and Girona. So go out there and learn languages, and let's create more diversity when it comes to languages. That's what I have to say today. Bye for now.